Good morning, guys. If you've clicked on this video, you're very similar to me about 6 months ago. You've realized that AI is starting to decay your brain and you feel like you're less cognitively capable. First, we'll dive into the why. Why is AI causing me to feel more stupid? It's the basic question, isn't it? Wrote a couple of bullet points. The first one is, and it's a big one, when we start to use AI, we reroute all of our thoughts through AI. If you're anything similar to me, about a year ago, about 6 months ago, what you'll do is you'll come up with a thought, and instead of really digging into that thought now, you start to type it into ChatGPT or Grok or Claude or whatever, and you don't actually think about it at all. Instead, you'll type it into the AI, you'll click enter, and then you'll just wait for it to process. When you're doing that, you're doing no sort of thinking yourself. And it gets to the point where your natural thought is literally, instead of your natural thought being, what's the answer to this? Or how do I solve this problem? Your thought is, what will ChatGPT say? Or I need to ask ChatGPT. And you need to think about how dangerous that is. With me, when I ended up transitioning to a sales role, and it was a completely new job. And I've always been able to learn really quickly, and I'm very articulate and good with my words. And I found that for the first time in my life, I wasn't. And the reason was AI makes you fucking lazy. It really ruins your brain. And it's something that it's very subtle as well. You don't think about it or really experience it until you do. The other thing is we use it as a shortcut as well. So for example, instead of actually doing a little bit of research or instead of reading, we literally chuck stuff into AI and we'll use it as a shortcut. I'll come to this later in the video, but the way that we actually learn is through something called knowledge webbing, and it stops that process completely. To be fair, the part of the video is now. So what knowledge webbing basically is let's say that I read a book. This is how I read books. So I'll read a book and I will literally annotate that book as I'm reading. So for example, I'm reading a passage and what I'll ask myself is, what does this remind me of? It'll remind me of, for example, let's say that I listened to a Joe Rogan podcast and somebody talked about this topic. I will literally annotate the book. I heard this here, or something similar. And what your brain does is it starts to link these pieces of knowledge together. And it's a strategy and it's a way for your brain to basically start to recall information and learn information. And you'll get to the point where you're talking and you'll literally be able to chain knowledge together, and it's how your brain works and learns. And when you're using AI, because you're not doing that learning process at all, you don't knowledge web at all either. When you actually get to knowledge web, and when you get to the point where you read exactly how I read, you sound so clever because you literally just start to talk and you will rattle off things one after another. AI will take that away from you. So what is it causing? We know that AI is causing us to become mentally lazy. You know that and I know that. You compare yourself now to like 2 years ago when you didn't know what ChatGPT was. You know that your brain, like the processing power of your brain, it just isn't as fast as it was. You know that and I know that as well. But you could talk about studies. So for example, there was a big MIT study done on essay writing, and they did a load of different things. They looked at how somebody's brain fires when using AI to write an essay versus without. And then what they even did is they looked at the people that used AI regularly and they took the AI away from them, and then they looked at how their brain worked, and the people started to panic because they started to use AI as a crutch, and that crutch was taken away from them. But they also vastly underperformed the control group as well. But you don't need a study to tell you that. You know this from just living your life. If you really think about it, you know there's a problem. So then the obvious question is, what do we actually do about it, Fraz? What I did was, you just need to wean yourself off it. For example, now, when you're on your phone, you're naturally going to, when you have a question, you're going to start, if you've got an iPhone, you're going to pull down the screen, you're going to type in ChatGPT, and then you're naturally just going to start typing, and you're going to do this almost without thinking about it. So what I would do is, and what I did, was delete the ChatGPT app and download a different LLM. So download Grok, like I did, and just start to use it, and you will use it way less because you're not used to using it. You'll only use it when you really need to use it. Either do that or completely delete it from your phone and only use it on your laptop. What you actually want to do is, though, you don't want to be somebody that completely disregards it and stops using it altogether, because it is a good tool and we know it does make you more productive. Everybody knows that. So what I would recommend is don't use it for shortcuts. Don't use it for, the little questions or the little thoughts that you have. Still try to read and still Google things. Use Google as much as you can. Only use AI for very specific tasks. And when you start to reduce this amount and you only use it for the bigger things, you'll notice the difference yourself. The biggest things or the biggest takeaways are: wean yourself off it, download Grok and delete ChatGPT or Claude or whatever you have at the moment. And the second thing is, don't use it for shortcuts. Try to make sure that you do that knowledge mapping as much as possible, just through learning and through searching for knowledge. When you go and you search on Google, or when you open a book to try and find the answer to something, you're naturally going to knowledge map a little bit anyway, or you're going to remember the information because you've put effort into doing that action. It takes effort to open Google Chrome and do a little bit of reading. It takes effort to open a book and to read, to answer a question or to gain knowledge. When you type a prompt into AI and it pumps out, to be fair, slop most of the time as well, it's not actually doing anything for you, and you're not learning anything. What you really want to think about is, you're not happy when you're doing that. So for example, let's say that with myself, about a year ago, I outsourced my brain to ChatGPT, and I would literally ask it a question. It could be a really big question as well, and I would literally just sit there stressed out waiting for the prompt to deliver an output. The problem with that is, first of all, you're sitting there stressed out. The second thing is, 9 times out of 10, it's going to be a shit answer as well. Even if you give it a really good prompt, and then you're going to be sitting there pissed off, telling it what you actually want it to output, and then eventually it's going to get it right. Do you really want to live your life like that, though? Ask yourself that question. And if the answer is no, take my advice on board. Delete whatever you're using, download a different LLM, and just start to use it less. Just actively think about using it less, and you will.